You can now subscribe and save 20% off with a Strava Craft Coffee subscription. That's right. You can have Strava Craft Coffee sent to your door every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks and save 20% off without ever even having to think about it. You'll never have to put in your credit card information. You won't have to worry about if you're going to run out of coffee because you'll always have that Strava coming straight to your door. It's CBD infused. It's rich. It's tasty. It can help you with aches and pains or whatever else you're dealing with. So check them out. Strava Craft Coffee. And if you just want to try them once, you can, of course, use that code DNVR20 to save it off your first order. Or again, subscribe and get 20% off every single time they send it to your door every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. So check them out, StravaCraftCoffee.com.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue till the bitter end. Come and join us at DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome in to the DNVR Broncos podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. Check them out, msudenver.edu/online for all they have to offer. 40 plus online and hybrid programs, 750 total classes. There's something for everyone. And MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution, meaning you can keep that full-time job and further your education. So hopefully you can level up in that job or level up in a different industry. So check them out, msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what's going on? Happy first day of the off season, first Monday of January. And again, that is the first day of the Broncos off season for what? A 5th straight year?
Yeah, 5th straight year that they've gone into this without the postseason. Although, as I detailed in my postgame piece last night, you can find on ddnvr.com, really, in a lot of ways, the real season is about to begin for this franchise.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's exactly what you're getting at, but a lot of times when you're bad, the offseason feels like the on-season. And that's how it's felt for the Broncos for a while here. One thing that we are very confident that we won't be covering here in this offseason is a coaching change.
Yay.
And that's big news because it feels like every other year that's just been a part of the Broncos cycle. And like we mentioned last night on the show, they've kind of tried everything at this point. One thing they haven't tried is letting it ride and sticking with it and trying out continuity, which is the official word of the Broncos 2021 off season. And I think that's where we're at here. Is okay, well, let's see if this works. Run it back. Keep most of the same players. Keep most of the same coaches. And actually, I don't know if this is on Twitter, but my Sunday Night Football ends last night, and they cut over to a 9 News kind of like Broncos special. Mike Kliss said on there that he believes the entire coaching staff will be back for 2021, including Tom McMahon. So continuity is a big part of what the Broncos are going to do moving forward. But continuity doesn't mean do everything the same, because clearly some changes need to be made. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this with you guys is because of a stat that I saw come out this morning. This came from Computer Cowboy on Twitter, who showed the chart of expected win probability lost by kicking in go situations in 2020. The Broncos were 3rd to last in win probability lost based on being too conservative. And it's funny because the 2 teams in front of them or behind them in this case are the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints. So if Vic Fangio wants to defend himself here, he has a decent case. But to me, when you are a average team trying to fight and get your way in, you have to go above and beyond. You can't play it safe. This isn't 2015 anymore. So for me, what needs to change for Vic Fangio in 2021 and moving forward, if he's going to be the coach of the future of the Broncos, is he has to get more aggressive. He has to believe in his guys more, and he has to try and trust his offense in those situations.
Well, and I think everyone remembers last night and the game management decisions, but also, well, the game that really sticks out to me is against the Kansas City Chiefs. And you knew that the Broncos had to do crazy things in order to beat the Chiefs. And they did a good job of hanging in the game. But when they weren't aggressive against the Chiefs on the road, and really a game that there was nothing to lose for the Broncos, just a ton to gain, Vic Fangio was not aggressive. And what jumps out to me about this was, guys, we heard that Vic Fangio didn't like how Rich Scangarello was holding back Drew Lock last year. He was not being aggressive with Drew, and that was one of the reasons why he made the change at offensive coordinator. Well, this kind of doesn't play into that as well. So you would like to see Vic be a lot more aggressive, especially for a team that next year we're probably not talking about a 12-4 Broncos team. We're talking about a team on the verge of the playoffs potentially, and you need to take risks in order to get to the playoffs. Because a 10-6 team this year didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're a team like the Broncos, where, like you said, you're not a 12-4 team, if you're going to succeed, you're going to have to steal things at the margins a little bit. And the problem is, one of the facets of Vic Fangio that's been most frustrating the last couple of years is that this team, I think, has lost at the margins. The EPA stat just kind of proves it right then and there. The areas where they could kind of pick up a little bit of an advantage, they're giving it away. So that in turn leads to being 12-20 over the last two seasons.
Am I getting too greedy when I say, like, I want the Broncos to hire an analytics guy? Like, is that so much to ask?
Well, it's not, because they had a game management guy last year, and analytics is the way of the future. So that's not crazy to ask.
But, like, am I being unrealistic? Am I getting my hopes up for something that isn't going to happen?
Yeah, you certainly are, because I mean, Ryan, we say that that's the way of the future. Well, look at the Broncos coaching staff right now. They're not trying to go to the future. They're trying to go with experience with the veteran coaching staff to match the young offense, and this up and coming defense is what it may turn into with a lot of new young guys coming in. So they're not trying to go the way of the future like the analytics would be.
That it's so hard to be okay with that, knowing how much analytics are playing a role in everything going on around the league. Now, I think there is a place for gut decisions from coaches, but generally, it's kind of like I don't know. I just think that more often than not, you should say, what do the analytics say here? Let's go with that. And based on analytics, they're telling you that more often than not, if you go with that decision, then you will get the better result in the end. If for some reason, you don't feel like the offensive line is executing, and you think, like, I just don't trust us to run the ball up the middle here on 4th and 1 or whatever, or I don't know if Drew Lock's going to be able to complete this, whatever it is, like, once in a while, just go with your gut. That's okay. But I don't like the fact that, as far as I know, there's no one in Vic Fangio's headset telling him, hey, expected win probability is, there's a big gap between punting here and going for it. Like, I just love, I would feel a lot more comfortable if Vic just had that information in his ear.
So you want the Moneyball type of coaching where it's based on the percentages and everything like that.
I just want the percentages available to the head coach so he can know what they are, and if he decides, like, I forget what it was. I want to say the difference between going for it and not going for it in that Chiefs game was something like 24% win probability change. Like, I want him to have to say no to that.
Right.
when he makes that decision. I want him to say like, no, I believe in this 24% loss in win probability, and I'm still going for it. But there's a part of me that thinks they got rid of that because he didn't want that information in his ear, and I don't like that. There was, of course, he went for 2 at one point because of, that's what the analytics said, and it didn't work. And I remember him saying afterwards something along the lines like, I didn't really like that idea in the first place, and but we went with the numbers, and I should have just gone with my gut. And I was like, oh God, this is not trending in the direction I wish it would.
Well, the thing is, though, didn't we have a similar conversation about game management, about Vance Joseph in 2017, 2018? So really, has it gotten any better under Vic Fangio? I mean, the thing that they've done better, I think that goes to coaching, is that they've cut the penalties over the last couple of years. But in terms of game management, I feel like we're saying some similar sentiments about Fangio that we did about Vance Joseph, and that these were reasons why Vance Joseph had to go after 2 years.
So then, guys, it makes me question if 2 people are having the same issue. Is that coincidence and they were both just not the best at it and needed more help with it? Or is that something above them and looking at the constant here, and not necessarily John Elway himself, but just the organization's view on this?
I think it's more about a lack of trust because the Broncos haven't had a good offense since 2014. I mean, think about that. Like, this team hasn't had a good offense. 2014. I was barely in my 20s the last time the Broncos had a good offense.
And now you're old.
And now I'm almost 30. I guess maybe not quite that. But it was ages ago. The last time the Broncos had a good offense, and I just don't think the coaches trust the offense. And so that's the one thing that isn't brought into analytics is, well, how good is your team at actually creating good plays? It can tell you what your win probability is if you go for it or if you don't, or if you convert it or if you don't, but it doesn't tell you what your probability of converting it is. And I think that's what Vic Fangio's behind the scenes answer would be. Well, I don't trust that offense. They suck. So that's what has to change moving forward, is the offense has to be trustworthy to convert short yardage situations. I know another thing that I think Vic Fangio would say is, if we can't convert 3rd and short, what makes you think we can convert 4th and short? So I sympathize with that side of it a little bit, but at the same time, our guy Bronco Tiz here says 9 seconds on the clock. Why not take one more play? I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I think it's because Drew almost threw a pick on the play before. It was like, it wasn't almost, but it was not. No one was comfortable when that ball was in the air on that out route to Deontay Spencer, which questionable in itself. But I honestly think Vic saw that play, his heart dropped, and he was like, you know what? Just kick it.
Okay. Well, there's 2 things, though. I'm sorry, Zach. First of all, if you don't, this is another discussion entirely. If you don't trust Drew Lock to throw the ball there, do you have the right quarterback? And second of all, that is the situation where it's very easy to have a no-risk play.
Yeah.
To get 5 yards quick out. And if you miss, you're throwing it to the sideline. I mean, it doesn't matter really who your quarterback is. You can have that be a play that has 0 negative risk and only potential gain. So what's the problem? Especially
when you're at 63. If you were at 56, I'm fine with it, honestly. You don't want to risk a pick. You don't want to risk a player getting stopped in bounds, whatever. Your kicker can make 56.
Yeah.
You do not know that your kicker can make 63. So your risk reward is definitely there to try and get 5 more yards, even get him inside the 50s where he's been really good.
Mm-hmm. And to add to this, after the game, it was the first question that was asked to Vic from Ryan O'Halloran of the Denver Post, and he said, with 9 seconds left, did you consider doing another play to pick up a few more yards? And Vic was a little confused, and I don't know if he knew what he was confused about, but he said, well, there was only 7 seconds left, and Ryan kind of looks around the room, and then Vic ended up saying, We didn't think that risking that time being lost potentially was worth it with Brandon McManus's legs. So maybe there was something there. Maybe there was some confusion on how much time was left actually in there, or maybe Vic was confused and thinking of the first half. But it was interesting because typically Vic's pretty sharp with those things and knows exactly what's being talked about.
Yeah, I don't like confusion. I want clean decisions being made. Vic, I felt like was confused in week 1. About what was happening. It was all happening so fast. They were driving down. They were going to go kick a game-winning field goal, and he sat there with all his timeouts. I feel like there was some confusion or just lack of awareness on calling the timeout during the 2-point conversion. I don't think Vic Fangio knew the play clock was as low as it was, and he bailed them out there. So I don't know. I don't know what they need to do, but some things need to change in terms of game management. I think that's very, very clear. And I really hope that Vic Fangio is open-minded to something. Now, it doesn't, at least initial off-season buzz is that there won't be any coaching staff changes. Because I was going to say, well, let's bring in a special teams coordinator who also specializes in game management. I know Joe DeCamillis was very heavily involved in game management when he was here, so that's a help. But Vic Fangio clearly needs help in this area. I don't think that's even debatable at this point.
Yeah, no, it's not. But Ryan, what I would say is don't get your hopes up, because after week 1, the issue that you're talking about that happened in week 1, Vic Fangio said we're not changing anything. And so I would be shocked. I would be surprised, honestly, if they do make a significant move, whether that's, changing the way they do it during the game and telling us about it, or whether that's bringing someone in specifically to help Vic during a game.
Yeah, and I think part of the result we're seeing here is this team remains pretty poor in end game situations. That touchdown last night by the Raiders at the end, that was the 11th score the Broncos have allowed in the last 7.5 minutes of a game when it was a 1-score game, when the Broncos were leading by 1 score or tied. Only 2 other teams, Detroit and Tampa Bay, in the last 2 years have allowed more total scores in that situation than the Broncos have.
And that is got to be the second most, if not the most concerning thing with Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
You brought him here to be an ace defensive coordinator, and his defense, flat out, period, does not close. There's no case to be made that it does. And so that has to change moving forward. And that, to me, isn't a talent issue. If you can stop him in other times in the game, you can stop him at the end. It's the way that Vic Fangio is calling the defense at the end of the game that clearly isn't working. That has to change moving forward.
Well, and just defense overall. You brought him in not to be a CEO, not to help the offense and be good on defense. You brought him to make the defense elite. And I know he was down a lot of starters, and that's why he is getting the benefit of the doubt. But moving forward, you only get so many benefit of the doubts before it's just not working. Guys, this year, we talked about how the defense needed to be elite while this offense was average. That was their formula to the playoffs this year. Obviously, the offense wasn't average. The defense wasn't elite with so many injuries. But the defense only held teams under 20 points in 3 games. That is not even close to elite. I mean, that's barely showing flashes of elite. Yes, did we see flashes of elite defense? Yes, specifically against New England, we did. But it's got to be more consistent than that. And the fact that they allowed over 27 points per game is nowhere close to what needed to happen. It was a bottom 10 scoring defense in the league. So that's something that just immediately has to change. You know what? If after this year, Vic Fangio has a top 5 scoring defense and he made 1 or 2 questionable calls as a head coach and the offense was average, we're still probably talking about a borderline playoff team, at least an improved team, probably a 9-7 team. He keeps his job there. So that, without a doubt, is the most important thing that Vic needs to do, is get this defense consistently playing really good.
Yeah, and playing badly down the stretch as well. I mean, if you take the last 6 games of the season, you're allowing just under 30 points per game in the last 6 games. And the interesting thing is you can kind of you take the New Orleans debacle and everything that went wrong. You're still averaging almost 30 points per game allowed in those last 6 games. And in going 1-5 at the end in those 6 games, that's the worst the Broncos have done in games 11 through 16 of a 16-game schedule, matching 92 and 2010. And what's interesting is both of those previous years resulted in coaching changes. This one won't.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. And speaking of, of point totals, last night I'm looking up, the Broncos offense, and I found an encouraging Pat Shurmur stat. Since 2017, so the last 4 full seasons, the Broncos have scored over 27 points just 10 times, which is really bad. 10 times in 4 full seasons, so 10 times in 64 games, the Broncos have scored over 27 points. That's terrible. But 50% of those came this season. 5 out of those 10 came this year, including 4 with Drew Lock and 1 with Brett Rippon, of course, against the Jets. And to me, that's a nice feather in the cap of Pat Shurmur. You need more of those for sure. And it's also a sign that the talent on offense has certainly gotten better. Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, Noah Fant, all these guys contributed to this offense being better this year. You didn't see it enough, but you did see flashes. And on the flip side, the concerning thing about those, from a Vic Fangio standpoint, is the Broncos were only 3-2 in games in which they scored over 27 points this year. If you're a defensively based team, you got to win every game where you are scoring 27 or more points. We usually set that number at 24. You should be winning games 24-21 consistently with the way the Broncos are paying their defense. Now, they didn't have their whole defense this year, but with the investments they put into it, along with the full investment of their head coach was brought here just to have an elite defense, you got to be better than 3-2 in games in which your offense scores 27 or more.
Yeah, and you should be 5-0. And then what are we talking about? We're still not talking about a great team. We're talking about a 7-9 team right here, but it's not a step back from where they were last year. And just something else, guys. And speaking of that 1-5 and the struggles, Broncos finished 1-5 in the AFC West. That is a tough pill to swallow. And I got to say, kudos to John Elway for really sticking by continuity, because this show today has really opened my eyes to the fact that if John Elway would have made a move at head coach and made a change, he would have had plenty to back him up to do it.
Yeah, and although the 27-point thing is interesting because that's those 5 games, that's better than only 5 teams.
In terms of how many teams in the league did that much? How
many games you had with 27 or more points? Only the Jets, Jaguars, Washington, the Giants, and the Eagles were worse. So is it progress? Yes, but it's far from where you need to be.
Absolutely. I mean, in today's NFL, teams are scoring in the 30s there are teams scoring in the 30s every week. There's teams scoring in the 40s. The Bills are putting up 40s in the 40s every week for the last 3 weeks, I believe. So this is the most perplexing and frustrating thing about the Broncos in this era of football. That in the single most offensive era in the history of the NFL, the Broncos have been atrocious, anemic, incompetent, whatever word you want to use on offense, and it makes it 10 times worse. This isn't 1998 where you grind it out and you try to win 17-16 with 2 John Elway touchdown drives at the end. Although 1998 Broncos offense was really good, so maybe I should have said 1993 or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the point is, the Broncos are like decades behind the NFL right now in terms of their offensive output, and it makes it way harder for the fans. It hurts the patience the fans have with Drew Lock. It hurts the patience the fans have with Pat Shurmur, and the talent is clearly there. So next year, like, there's no more time to wait. This team has to put it together offensively and start scoring points.
I was going to say that the whole formula that the Broncos are being built on, at least starting with their head coach, then scares me about all of this, Ryan, because if it's offensive based and all about scoring, then the expectations for Vic should probably be lowered from the defensive side. And instead of, holding teams to 20, maybe it should be 24, and then you have to score 25 in order to win. And we know that the Broncos offense can get to 25 points, but we're still waiting on consistency. And who's to say that next year is that year when they're consistently dropping 27 points?
No one. And that's worrisome. The problem is it feels like you never get a game where the defense is good and the offense is good too. It feels like, I don't actually know, but I bet you the Broncos offense is not coming through in the games in which the defense holds the other team under 24 points. It feels like it's one or the other type of thing, and that's frustrating.
What you're saying is that we don't really ever see any blowouts where the Broncos are ones that benefit.
No, honestly, yesterday should have been a Broncos blowout. Like I was looking up, they turned the ball over. I was like, man, are the Broncos gonna pull away in this thing? And of course, field goal, and then you lose.
It kind of reveals how far this team has to go, because that defense that was exploited by the Raiders at times, that defense without most of its starters, had 4 takeaways, and that is as close to a sure thing. 4 takeaways, no giveaways. That's as close to a sure thing for victory as exists in the NFL today. It was, I believe the streak was 62 games in a row league-wide that teams with 4 takeaways, no giveaways had won until yesterday.
Well, and here you go, guys. Of the Broncos' 5 wins, only one of them was by more than 7 points, and that one win was against the New York Jets. They had one other win in which they won by a touchdown against the Miami Dolphins, and outside of that, it was all less than a touchdown.
Yep. And yesterday, they get two turnovers in plus territory. Came away with 0 points from those.
That can't happen. That simply can't happen.
Can't happen. It just did.
That's the game.
and they lost.
Yeah.
That's why it can't happen.
Yeah. That's the game. You come away with 0 points there, you lose by 1. Other teams, when the Broncos turn it over in plus territory, feels like there's a touchdown in the next 2 plays guaranteed.
Right.
Last thing I want your guys' thoughts on, because I don't think this has necessarily made its way into the Broncos Twitter sphere or just the online sphere yet. It's just that what I mentioned from Mike Kliss's report on 9 News last night, that the entire coaching staff is expected to be back in 2021. And we talked about it on our show last night. We all said that we thought Tom McMahon would be gone, and we thought that would be the right decision. So what's your reaction to it? At least the original reporting on this being that Tom McMahon will be back in 2021.
Well, Ryan, I love the way that you relay it both times. The entire, just a huge emphasis on entire, of course, with Tom McMahon in mind. And man, I mean, that is sticking by continuity. You got to give the Broncos credit. And you know what?
But that's the one place where you've had continuity and it hasn't worked.
Well, that's true. And they're
no. You've had 3 special teams coaches or 2 special teams coaches in 4 years. So it hasn't been total continuity. You went through.
This was year 3 for him.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't believe in change for change's sake. I mean, if you're gonna make a change, it's got to be a reason, right?
Yes.
If Tom McMahon had been fired, or is going to be fired, I doubt he will. He'd be a scapegoat. But when you look at the list of problems on this team, where do special teams rank?
In terms of importance, it's not super high up there.
It's pretty well down the list. And I mean, there were things to be frustrated about, but in the end, the special teams, it was probably middle of the pack league wide when we get Rick Gosselin's rankings in a few weeks. And if that's the case, then why are you making him the scapegoat when there are other things that are fundamentally going wrong? And that's the problem I had with the notion of firing McMahon. It's like, okay, it feels like change for change's sake, just because we have to do something, and that's not the kind of change you should make.
But it's not, to me, it's not just change for change's sake. It's change for the sake of someone being not good at their job. And that's what Tom McMahon has been this year, last year, and the year before, is not good at his job. So on the same account as you don't make change just for change's sake, to me, I don't want continuity for continuity's sake, which I'm worried about in several positions, but especially here where we've seen it for 3 years. The Broncos have not had good special teams units under Tom McMahon. And to me, you have to make a change there. That doesn't mean just do it. You should have a plan, but in my opinion, you should be able to get someone who's better than Tom McMahon.
Well, and here's what we may see then is in these next 24, 48 hours, everyone keep their job. And then the Broncos are going to take a week or two off and then reconvene. We could very well see the exact same situation that we saw with Rich Scangarello last year, because then all coaching changes will be made in the NFL. We'll know what special teams coordinators are available. And then Vic can say, okay, am I going to be able to hire someone that I think is better than Tom McMahon? Then I'm moving on from Tom McMahon, even though it's 2 weeks down the line. Or is there no one out there that I think is better? Then we're going to stay with Tom McMahon.
It'll be interesting to see. I think you're right, Zach, that it could be a while, and we might get the classic second quarter of a playoff game, new special teams coach is fired, news drop. So we have that to look forward to. But for now, on the live side of things, that's going to wrap it up for us. We will be continuing things on the podcast side. You can download anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just type in DNVR Broncos, or honestly, you can just type in Broncos. We're the first one that comes up. And listen to the rest of it. Of course, you can become a member of DNVR and leave your questions for us. We will answer them every single day. Yes, that's right. If you're new to the program, we do it every day. Off season, on season, whatever it is. We're with you 5 days a week, no matter what. So check us out on the podcast side, where we'll be every day for the off season. And for those of you on the live side, we'll talk to you later.